Hey there, I'm Ashley, and this is New Day with Ashley. If you're looking for inspiration to make a difference and create lasting impact, then you're in the right place. Get ready to be encouraged by the stories of my guests who have taken risks, overcome challenges, and created opportunities. It's time to make the most of your new day. My guest today brings a ton of energy and excitement with a passion for the nonprofit world. Patrick Kirby has spent nearly 2 decades working as a fundraiser in the nonprofit industry and is the champion cheerleader of nonprofits. Patrick is the founder of Do Good Better Consulting, author of the Amazon bestseller Fundraise Awesomer, a practical guide to staying sane while doing good, and host of the official Do Good Better podcast. Well, welcome, Patrick. Patrick Kirby, it's so great to have you.
It's so nice to be here, finally.
And it's a new day.
It's a totally new day.
New day.
Yeah.
And you clearly are passionate. You're bringing the energy.
I've been drinking coffee since 4:30 this morning in preparation.
I got you some water. So if
I know
you
I need to calm down. I get it. I'm very excited. First of all, congratulations on the new show.
Thank you.
This is super exciting. I watched a couple of them, and it's great. So it's nice to have a voice like this and a show like this to kind of feature. It's great. So
and,
kudos.
You know, you are a podcaster.
I am.
You're a man of many hats.
Well, yes.
So tell us a little bit about, because I mean, how many episodes do you have? Like 200 and
at time of taping, we've got 220 released, and we've got about 35 ready to go. It's a lot, and that's why I empathize with the whole situation here. Yeah. It's just it's a lot of stuff. So yeah, I do.
And you do a couple a week.
I do three a week, which is an insane amount of legitimate content. But we've had this belief at the company just to kind of let's give as much content away as possible, because we just know that if you're a small or a medium-sized nonprofit that just doesn't know what on earth they're doing, where do you go? You got to search the internet for things. You got to just, sort of guess on what best practices are, or have it all in one hub and have it accessible. And we wanted to be the accessible group that did that. Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about who Patrick Kirby is.
Sure. Oh yeah. Well, it's a dangerous
I mean,
question
I got,
just to kind of float.
As much time as we
Brevity
need.
is not my strong suit at all. So I'm Patrick Kirby. I'm the founder of Do Good Better. We're a consulting firm that helps nonprofits suck less at fundraising. And the reason I say that is because most people who work in the nonprofit realm are accidental fundraisers. They bump into this job. They either like the idea or the impact that an organization does, but nobody's really there's no school. There's no
for fundraising.
Bachelor's degree in annual giving fundraising. It
How
just
to
doesn't
ask
exist.
for money.
Nobody has that, right? So they usually end up in this weird role of go out and raise money by doing events or whatever. And nobody really knows how to do that. And so our company is basically there to help guide you on those really first steps. And then once you're good at that, then you get to go a little more advanced. And then after that, you get to be, so it's a step-by-step process. And we just came to the idea after doing this for a long time that this was kind of a great option. I got my start out of college by working at my old high school. I was a politics major, which meant I was immediately unemployable after college. They don't tell you that in the university system. You get a politics degree that you just don't get jobs. They just don't give you jobs for that.
You may not actually be employed.
Not great. So thanks, counselors. That was great. But they said they were looking for somebody who's an alumni who would like to do some events and some fundraising stuff. And I said, I'm good. I'm in. And I loved it. And I went on to the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation down in the Twin Cities. And so I ran their walk programs regionally and did some of their big galas. And that's kind of when I really fell in love with fundraising as a thing. My wife is from up here, so I now live up here. That's kind of how it goes. And I got recruited out to work at the Ann Carlson Center out of Jamestown, North Dakota. I was their chief development officer for about 5 years. And that's where I think I really understood the plight of some of these smaller nonprofits. I was asked to sort of coach some smaller ones for a couple of events in this neck of the woods. And I was addicted to that light bulb moment where they said, oh, it's not that difficult, or it's not that hard, or I
Cool.
can do this kind of moment. And I was like, there might be a business model here.
Right.
And either nobody tried it, or they did and they failed miserably. And it was lucky that it was the former, not the latter. And thus, Do Good Better Consulting was formed. And so that's kind of what.
And so how many years ago was that?
5
years. Okay.
5 years ago.
Wow.
So we started doing it amateur-wise about 7 or 8, and in 5 years we decided to start this. I made the great decision to do that immediately after our 3rd child was born, which is a great idea if you're an entrepreneur or a budding entrepreneur.
Have a baby,
have a 3rd baby, and then be the one who has health insurance and go, you know what, I want to start my own business. Because that's a really great conversation to have with your spouse, and it's great. And it was great. It was love at first sight. We had a bunch of clients that we had that onboarded, right, and we've been legitimately sprinting ever since.
Wow.
It's been fun.
It's been a wild ride,
Yes.
It sounds like.
Yes, very much so.
Okay, so Do Good Better. Like, I love that. Can you explain a little bit about what the meaning is, where you came up with that?
Sure. Well, I've used the term do-gooders in the nonprofit realm for a long time. Sure. I think that's just kind of what we refer to ourselves as. And there's a moment where we were trying to figure out, not a business name. I had a couple of names that I had in mind, but they all sounded like law firms. And I was like, this doesn't sound like me. And I was trying to find something that was not quirky, but at least sort of a little left of center in the sense of like what represents a personality of kind of what we're trying to accomplish here. And it was a moment where I was trying to explain what we were going to do, and say, well, I just want to help people do good, but I just want to help them do good better. And I was like, there it is. And it's weird enough that people go, so your company is do better, gooder, better, doers. Something along those lines is fine. But it just stuck. And there's a book called Doing Good Better, which is about altruism in business. But that was the only thing that was really kind of near it.
Right.
I grabbed it, and then it was to the Secretary of State's office immediately, and I was like, let's
we're making it real. It's happening.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So 5 years, Do Good Better.
Yep.
You made you had a quote, not a quote, but you've made a statement about the most dangerous phrase
in the English language.
Yeah. Always done it this way.
Correct. Yeah.
So why is that?
Well, so it's a quote from an admiral in the Navy that I totally ripped off from it was in a school somewhere. And the most dangerous phrase in the English language is, we've always done it that way. And what I meant by that was, in fundraising and nonprofit work especially, is that the old guard are so nervous about doing anything that's going to disrupt the apple cart. And I've always been, or had this disruptor mindset, not to burn everything down to the ground,
sure,
but just sort of say there's got to be an easier, better way. We might be overcomplicating this. We might be doing too many things in between. And from a fundraiser's perspective, simplicity is key. You know, it's clear over clever. Like, those are the things that if you are really good at, you're a wonderful fundraiser, because you don't have to confuse everybody about what you're saying. If you're an organization that tries to help individuals who maybe have food scarcity, right? We help individuals who don't have enough food, rather than complexity within the economic system has allowed individuals to not have enough resources, and that doesn't. You're zoned out.
Me, no idea what you do.
We try to help people have the basic needs they do to feed their families. That's really the clear over clever, and I think there's a resistance to doing something different or changing or tweaking. And I think that resistance becomes stale at an organization. And once you're stale, you're playing catch up. And I don't think that can ever be a thing that the nonprofit realms really embrace. And so I try to kick down those doors whenever possible.
Cool. No, I love it. And you're working with all different types of organizations. So you're consulting. All these organizations, but now you have, like, I go on your website and there's a ton of information. Like you said, like, we're trying to give all this information, and it's great. Webinars, a book.
What?
I mean, fundraise awesomer. I love it. Again, that's very very on brand.
My mom, who's a teacher in 5th grade, when I showed her the title, and she's like, "Awesomer is not a word," and I was like, "Yes,
so you know,
but go with me on this. I want you to fundraise awesomer." And she's like, "Yeah, I don't necessarily get it." She likes it now.
Yeah.
It's kind of clever, but but she was not at first. No, so the book came out of a conversation I had with a client that was really early on, and I've been working on for my own self, right, a technique of trying to like partition my time. Like I'm entrepreneur brain.
Yeah.
People will have this all the time. Where like I've got 20,000 ideas and I can't get to all of them, and really I was missing some of the priorities. So I was trying to frame out a day. I was also trying to then apply that to a fundraiser's brain, because as a fundraiser, I couldn't do the 10,000 things I needed to do every day. Most of them other duties as assigned, and the things that I needed to do I couldn't get to because I couldn't figure out and carve out the time to do so. So the book was based on a training I was doing with a client, and their CEO stopped me after one of the presentations, and she said, "You better patent that or something, because that's really good." And I was like, "Really?" So how it came to be was, all right, I'm going to pitch this as a concept to teach at a conference. And so I applied to the Minnesota Council of Nonprofits annual fundraising meeting. And I said, all right, this is one of those big ones. If this concept is interesting, they'll pick it up and they will ask me to present. I'd never spoken in front of anybody before, so this was kind of a wild ride anyway. And so I submitted it and I waited, and sure enough, about 2 weeks later, they said, "This is great. This is something we'd really want." And I'm like, oh, crap. Now I got to build a presentation. So I build a presentation and I say, okay, well, if this presentation goes well, I'll write a manuscript for the ebook or whatever the heck I was going to do. So I go down to the Twin Cities, I present. The room was overflowingly packed. Wow. I don't know anybody here. Like it is just by name only, this sort of 5-day fundraising framework that I had built out, packed it, and it ended up being like the #1 rated presentation in the entire conference.
Wow.
And I was like, oh crap, now I got to write a manuscript. So I set out on writing the book, and it was just this weird process. I'd never written anything that long since a dissertation in college. It was politics, so clearly it was worthless. So I wrote, and then on New Year's Eve of 2018 is when I kind of got done with it at the West Fargo Public Library. As I put the finishing dot on it, and I sent it to my editor, and I said, let's rock and roll. And a couple months later, it was live. Yeah.
Awesome. So people can buy this. Amazon. Yeah.
Go to Amazon, and it's
and I love
right there.
A practical guide to staying sane while doing good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of those things where that's my whole purpose of not only Do Good Better, but it was part of the book, is that you don't need to be insane to be doing good. And if I can simplify that. And so the whole concept of the book is that you just do one thing a day, every day of the week, to move the needle forward. So we plan on Mondays, we execute on Tuesdays, we document all these awesome conversations we have on Wednesday, and then on Thursday we find some reason to celebrate, because we live in the Midwest. We think it's bragging, so we got to learn how to celebrate things.
Right.
And then we end the week with appreciation. And then that thank you note, that thank you meeting, that thank you phone call you make on Friday, when you wrap everything around and you're ready to plan your week, the last thing people remember you is that really authentic gratitude, rather than me asking you for money. And they're more likely to answer the phone, and then you start your week all over again.
I love it. And so that's really come because you've been in those shoes.
Yeah.
So you know what it takes, what it looks like, and have seen success within the organizations you work for, but then your clients also.
Right, and more importantly, the abject failures that I hope to make everybody else try to avoid, that I went through.
Sure.
And that this would probably help. And I think there's a difference between sort of an academic type of training where you're like, philosophically speaking, if you do all these things and these numbers and blah blah blah. And what I love about our company, and I love about talking with nonprofits every single week, 3 times a week on our podcast, is I'm getting real-time information, boots on the ground, what's working and what's not. And so it doesn't take 3 years to publish something. We immediately come out with a webinar to train on it.
Right.
Or we can immediately post something or immediately write a blog about it, so that I'm sort of disseminating the information that we're getting from those who are doing the work that's making the world better. and trying to get it in front of as many people as possible immediately. And that quick ability to just learn and say and do is, I think, an advantage that a lot of nonprofits now have if they just kind of hang out with us and sort of follow along.
Follow what you're doing. So walk me through a little bit. I can relate to you a lot in being an entrepreneur and having to do all the things, putting yourself out there like, hey, I got this great idea. Oh, someone bit. Great. Now I got to figure it out.
Yeah.
But I think that's like such good advice to other people. Like, okay, overcoming challenges, taking that risk, walk us through kind of some of those things of like key things that you did or have done.
Yeah.
Like that, speaking events, like that was new.
Yeah.
But how do you, teach other people to like, you got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, that was, well, okay. I may have had an advantage because I was a theater kid in high school and college, right? So I think, right.
I was not.
So that may come as a shock, I'm sure, to everybody who I run in circles with. But that was one of the best things that I'd ever done, and sort of the best lessons I've learned was, how to react on stage, or how to in the moment make a decision on a character or something else, and that kind of filtered through to a business world. Like, I got to make a decision immediately on how I'm going to do this. So my comfortability on stage, I think, had a lot to do with just me being on stage a lot. But one of those things, and we all have this, and if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening, you have this, which is like, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And you have this thing in the back of your brain, this sort of self-conscious
voice. I don't know.
Horrible voice, right? I had been, and even today I have that when I get in front of maybe somebody or an organization that I even look up to, or who's looking to me for advice. And I have this moment of like, what am I going to teach them? And you got to realize that your perspective is invaluable to people who've never heard your perspective.
Sure. That's a good point.
If you don't say it, they don't grow. And if they don't say it and you think you're not giving it a chance to go, you're keeping another group or another person from growing because you could help them and you just think that you're not in that realm. I'm sure you have this similar, right?
Right.
So you have a wonderful podcast. You've got a platform that people can come on and kind of talk about their businesses and their passions and how they're trying to make the world a better place. What you have to offer is helping them and sort of navigating what works and what doesn't on a podcast, right? So, but you might introduce or have somebody on that has been doing this a long time, but maybe they're not framed right, or maybe they're not speaking into the microphone or whatever. Oh. Your expertise, really, your
or they
expertise.
Have Invisalign in.
Twins. What's up? Invisalign twins. But you might have a great piece of advice.
You sound great, though, by the way.
Well, you do too. And I think it's just a self-conscious thing that we are both experiencing. And that was my favorite part about us grabbing coffee the other day was
I tried to order coffee for you.
Yes. And we just had like whatever's in the straw.
And he goes, he drinks anything with a straw. I'm like, because he has Invisalign. I'm like, no way, me too.
Yeah, I know.
I'm okay. Great.
Twinsies.
We can order the same thing. Yeah.
It was perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
But right there, that's an example. Like, how do you suggest to others who may have an Invisalign or a braces or whatever? That's a really prime example of using your own expertise and knowledge on how you've interacted on camera to help other people do great stuff. And it's been very tough to trust myself on what I know and make sure that the experience that I've had, I know it works. So why would I try to prevent that from anybody else? And then just stepping out and just doing it. And then again, what's the worst that can happen? Right?
Someone
says no, or maybe one person doesn't like you. You're going to resonate with more people if you buy into what you're saying than you are not. And that's kind of crazy too.
And just be authentic to you,
Always.
know? Like, you got to be you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got to put awesomer on a book.
Yes.
If you were,
Why not? And I think that's the other thing too. You're as a unique individual or a unique business entity, right? You've already taken the leap to start a business or taken a leap to do something or start something new. Why stop? Like, who's like what's gonna? That doesn't help anybody at all. And sometimes you got to do something for you to explore what you want to do in the first place. Like, I never knew how I never knew I was going to get into podcasting, right? I just knew that the pandemic hit and I had space to put a podcast studio in. Okay, well, that seemed to be great. I did if I build it, I'll maybe have to do it. And it started off by just interviewing groups that I thought were really neat. Sure. And it turned out like people are asking me questions on the podcast. So it's like, okay, well, then I'll adjust the topic of conversation to then become something that people are really interested in. Okay. And that what they were interested in was also what I was passionate about. And then that grew into now what it is today. But it would have taken a very easy step of saying, I'll do that later.
Sure.
Rather than,
oh, yeah.
why not? Let's just do it now. Why not? It's not going to hurt.
That kind of happened to me. It's something I've always wanted to do. And it was just kind of out of like, now you're doing it.
Yeah.
You're now doing it.
Well, walk me through that because I'm always curious at that as a podcaster too. What was that moment where you're like, okay, I've always wanted to do it. What was that moment where you're like, I'm going to do it now? What was that line that you crossed that said, nope, I'm going to do this. This is the content I'm going to make. This is the content that I kind of want to do.
Well, it helped that a KFGO provided me a space, production of like things I didn't know how to do. And so it was a little bit of a different walk. I guess, different things like, oh, that door closed. Well, this one flung way open.
Yeah.
And willing to take a chance.
What I love about that though too is that that door flew open, but it was a mystery of like I don't really know what's going to go beyond that door, and you still did it,
right?
Rather than going back to a safe route on something else. And I think that's where the best creatives and the most interesting people live is the ones that go, I don't really know what I'm doing
that
here.
That one's shut. So
which other door should I do? It's the safe door over here,
yeah,
or it's the one that's the road less traveled kind of thing. It's the way that door that you didn't or that you passed was the way that things always have been, and you went through the door that it didn't. And I think that is an intriguing moment, and I think that's what makes entrepreneurs like yourself and like others so unique and interesting. Is that we crave that weird thing that everybody else is terrified of, and we're like, we'll give it a chance. What's the worst that can happen?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and we do it, and then sometimes it works, and sometimes it fails miserably, but we did it. Anybody could start a podcast like you. Most people don't.
Sure.
And so the audacity of just starting a show like this is pretty awesome. So kudos to you. That's awesome.
You.
Yeah.
Well, and for you too.
Yeah.
So that was right during the pandemic.
Yeah. It was right at the beginning. I got a big boy office. All right, so I was sitting at my my kitchen counter and working for about 2 years, and my wife got tired of paperwork in between where we were eating dinner.
Yeah.
And she said, "You just need to leave." And I said, "That's great." So I got a big boy office, and it was a couple months right before the pandemic hit, and so I was like, "Well, great." I got an office that the advantage was I got to go someplace during a pandemic that was not my house.
Right. So jealous. Jealous.
So
of you.
I'm like, crap, I have an office and I don't know what to do with it. I'm not bringing people in there, but at least I got to go to create. Right. And then I was looking on a way to like, I can't do speaking gigs anymore. So how do I broadcast some of these ideas, especially during the pandemic where people were just, I'm not really sure what to do. How do you do it? Well, let's start a podcast, or let's start webinars, and let's start going live every other day and just kind of reaching out to people who need our help. And it was out of others' need for help is what we created as part of that new, I hate the word pivot, but we pivoted and we leaned into where do people want to go for information? There's not a lot to do. We did a conference. We do a conference every year, the Do-Gooders Conference. Oh, yeah. And it was in person year number 1 in 2018. Well, 2019 or 2019, 2020 came around, couldn't do that anymore. So we went right to a virtual event, and we were the first conference in this region to go virtually at all. I mean, nobody else was doing that. We were the first ones.
They're just canceling
completely. And we said, no, we're going to do this. Now, dreaming big and doing all these things big, and we used our friends Mobile Pro who are here, who are Star Rockstar partners in that whole thing. We did 2 separate sound stages in order to separate everybody, because remember at that time, like everybody was like terrified of being even in a 20-foot proximity,
radius,
right?
Yeah.
So we did a concert series in between speakers in another soundstage across town. And then we did our other one at the Pines, which was like the first venue. It was the first event that they had done that wasn't a wedding.
Sure.
We're like, we'll do it.
Well,
This sounds
we
pretty
need the
interesting.
space, yeah.
When we did our first one, and our second one was like, can we just use the same space and we'll just do it virtually? They're like, yeah, that sounds good. Great. So we beamed in people from across the globe to participate and speak at on it virtually. And that set us on this path to kind of, sort of push our podcast and our content in a digital form. And we were not limited by just being in Fargo, North Dakota anymore. And that's been this really interesting path that we've taken, which is this, oh boy, our world's our oyster kind of bit, which is really, really kind of fun.
I think I was going to say about that, like that whole pivot opened up so many other avenues and doors and regions and just because now you're going on a tour. Is that with a conference?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
So the Do-Gooders Conference is going into. So we did our last one last year in person, and we decided that we were going to go to where people had been reaching out to see if we could ever come down and do a speaking event or whatever we couldn't get to. So we're actually taking the entire conference on the road. So we turned 5 years old in September, and a couple weeks later, we take the Do-Gooders Conference on the road. We're doing a 6-city Midwest tour in 3 weeks, and it's going to be like, sort of releasing the album and going on tour to support it kind of bit. We're getting like 80s Def Leppard like T-shirts, like concert tees with the dates on the back.
Are you really?
Yeah, we totally
cool.
are. And then we're gonna go to Des Moines and St. Paul, Minnesota, and Madison, Wisconsin, and Omaha, Nebraska, and Bismarck, North Dakota, and Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Not Fargo. We're just gonna try to expand our sphere of do-gooding to that Midwest sort of feel. We work with mostly Midwest nonprofits. We speak the language. We understand that we're in flyover country. We're not East or West Coast kind of folks who have a very different approach to fundraising. And what good is it if we don't go to those who need it the most in places that don't have conferences like this stop by? And we want to be those. So we're hitting the road. It's getting a van and everything.
It'll be nonprofits, nonprofit leaders. Okay.
Yep. Executive directors, even board members that get to show up, and it's a working session, and it's going to be fun, and we're just going to do lunch and coffee and donuts, and then just rock and roll. It's going to be super great.
What's some of the best advice that you've received starting your own business?
Oh man, that is great. So before I started my own business, I had everything built. Right? I had everything built. I had the website built. I did my headshots. I had my logo. I had my Facebook page. I had the announcement that said I'm starting my own company done.
Before you ever started?
Before I even started. I knew I was going to do it. I was going to do it. I just couldn't pull the trigger. And so I met with people that I knew that started businesses, and I talked to them all the time. I go, I don't know when to pull the trigger. I don't know what to do. I don't know when that's going to be. And I will never forget the conversation I had with Rebecca Undum.
Okay.
She's a speaker, and she's an author, and she's a coach, and she runs Growing Small Towns out of Oaks, North Dakota, and she's brilliant. And I used to work with her at the Ann Carlson Center for a brief moment of time, and we'd been buddies for forever. And I brought that up with her again, and she said, "What's the worst that's gonna happen?" She goes, "Can you get a job if this thing blows up in 6 weeks or 9 weeks? Can you get another job?" And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "Okay, well then what's I go, dang it." That was it. And I go, of course I could. If this fails miserably, what's the big deal? And it was positioned as like, how am I gonna be an example for my kids if they have a big, hairy, audacious goal and they pause? Am I doing them a service by not taking a leap of faith with myself? Am I being an example as a dad? And I know that's a little philosophical and stuff, but like, what am I doing to make them not proud of me? I wasn't interested in that. But what am I doing to lead by example? If they are ever hesitant about doing something, are they going to look to me and go, well, I mean, Dad started his own business? Because that's the same way I looked at my dad when he started his own business. You know, he had 3 kids in private Catholic school and then decided to quit his job and then he didn't take a paycheck for a year and a half. And he slept on the couch for 6 months. I watched it in real time because he knew he had something. He trusted his gut. He knew he was capable of doing it, and then just pulled the trigger. And I saw him suffer through it, and I saw him sort of persevere and then come out on top at the end. And I was like, I can do that too. I've seen the blueprint. And if I don't give that blueprint back to my kids, I said, what was that going to be? So combined with that advice and then just this will to go, if my kids ever have something that they want to do, I want to be the example to encourage them to do it and then put all effort into it. And if it fails, it's okay. Because I've had a lot of these things that didn't work out, these ideas that just flopped. And I want them to let you know that that's not a bad gig. It's fine because you're doing what you like to do. And I think to value happiness at a job, knowing that you can do things and help others, I mean, that is my biggest joy all the time. And that's, Yeah.
And I think even like the bigger risk is to not have tried.
Right. I mean, I don't want to have that regret at all, right? We have a finite amount of time on this earth, right? And I don't want to live with that. Oh, God, I wish I could have done that.
Yeah.
I get to now say, I got to do that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a cool feeling.
Even like, I tried that.
I tried that. Yeah.
That did not work.
No, I didn't. I know now.
But I tried it. I know that now.
Yeah. I know what not to do now. And I think people are sort of hesitant about that all the time. And being risk averse is something that we're trained to be. And I like encouraging those. And again, people who are starting other small businesses, I love helping and love sort of giving any piece of advice that I have, because I go, it's lonely. This whole entrepreneur thing is just a lonely road where you get random pieces of advice from people. The other piece of advice that I got from somebody else that I give to other people who are budding entrepreneurs is never take advice from somebody who's never started a business themselves.
Right. Yeah.
They've never taken a risk, but they've got. Oh yeah, they've read the textbook.
They know.
They took the course, but they never did. But they're the ones who have the most amount of advice for you, even though they've never taken it or done that risk themselves. And that was such a freeing response for people who said, "Well, that's kind of a stupid idea." I go, "No, your face is stupid. This is a good idea." But I go to somebody else who was an entrepreneur that said, "Well, that's a dumb idea, but here's how you could probably pull that off." And I go, well, that's the advice that I want to take. I don't want to have some sort of negative naysayer that says that's not fun or cool or awesome. I want them to be critical about it if they've got some useful piece of information, but never taking that full advice from them who's not taking that risk. Yeah. Is always something that I've always sort of tried to do.
Well, so surrounding yourself truly with people who will support you too. Yeah. So even having that in check first. And hey, if I don't have those people in my life right now, like I've got people, maybe an entrepreneur is like, I don't know anyone like that. Right. You got to go out and find them.
Exactly. And
we exist.
We exist. And we're always willing to sort of give up some time to do that, because we, do you have this too, where you get as excited about somebody else doing something? We become like other people's biggest cheerleaders.
I'm like way more excited to work on someone else's business than my own.
Yes, because I think that's part of the whole, how do we make everybody win? Because by doing that, we, sort of that rising tide helps all ships. And we know that the more we give, the more we're going to get. Paul McCartney was right. The Beatles were right. As much as you want to not. We give more, we get more. And in the entrepreneurial world, I think that's super important too. And it's really important to remember. And it's humbling to know that people maybe ask for advice. And it goes back to that, am I worthy of giving advice? Yeah, been doing this for 5 years. That's worth a pat on the back. Yeah. And I think we get to do that as entrepreneurs too. Like, this is a risk that we got to take. Cool. Yeah. Don't rest on your laurels too much, but give yourself some recognition on actually taking the risk and doing that. Like, again, how many podcasts have you done or released?
I don't know. We've got,
a bunch.
Yeah.
Right? Good.
14,
Kudos.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
20.
You know, the average person stops doing a podcast after like 8 episodes. You're way past that now, right? So you're like a superhero amongst podcasters already. So I think we deserve to recognize ourselves as doing that too. And and as a humble Midwesterners, right, who don't like to brag a little bit, right? We don't want to do that. It's not bragging; it's celebrating. And if we don't celebrate those wins, we don't celebrate the ones who helped us get there in the first place too. And that's really important. And that we talk about that in the fundraising stuff. We talk about that in the nonprofit work. Is if you're not celebrating a win with your donors don't know that their money has done anything to make a difference.
Right.
So make sure you have to celebrate. Brag about it, but you have to celebrate it because they want to be part of winning teams, and that begets momentum, and that encourages other people. Like, I want to be a part of that. They seem to be having fun and doing great things. And that positive outlook, and really this sort of putting good into the world sort of vibe, gets you more good vibes. I'm telling you.
Right. It is. It is an energy thing because
totally is.
Lots of good vibes.
Not woo-woo in energy, but kind of woo-woo energy. Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
But definitely, like, that positivity.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you love most about what you do?
Oh, geez. I love the light bulb moment more than anything in the world.
Earlier.
Right? That's my favorite thing in the entire world. And I love people who I get to talk to later and who say, I figured it out. You kind of maybe helped me on that right path, and I figured it out because of that. And that I don't make $1 from that, but that is the non-monetary joy that I get from doing the work that I do, is seeing the successes that other organizations get, and then what they do with it, and where they go with it. And, I get to be a part, really, of some wins early on, that I get to be a part of, like, multiple organizations. So I get to be a part of hundreds, if not thousands, of organizations every year. Awesome. And have a little bit of part. Or if I gave a speaking gig here, or I did a presentation there, or a webinar there, some little nugget of information that may have gotten them down the road or moved the needle forward a little bit, I get to have a small part in that. And that is that
fills your cup.
Oh my gosh, every single time. I would do it for free. And that's, I think,
when you love what you do.
Do you ever do that where you're like, I'd help another business?
I've done so many things for free.
And you would.
Because I enjoy it. I'm like, people are like, you should charge for that. Well, I really like doing it.
I know.
I mean, sure, I should. Maybe I will one,
If you ever win the lottery.
This was years ago. Yeah.
If you ever win the lottery, would you still do that kind of stuff?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? I would.
Would you? Yeah.
All the time. And I think that's how you're in the right position.
I'd maybe have like a different couch, maybe.
I don't know. This is a very nice couch.
I don't know. I do like the couch.
I do appreciate the couch. Maybe a couple more.
No, I'm just kidding.
A little more bling on the couches, but you do it, and I think that's what makes a great. I think that's what makes a great entrepreneur or a great business owner, or know you're in the right space, is that if you would actually legitimately do that.
Continue doing that. Yeah. So where can people find you? Where can they get your book? How can they get a hold of you? I mean,
there's many a ways. You can go
You sent me a very large. No,
there's very large list of things. It's that entrepreneur brain goes, I need to be everywhere. You can find me at dogoodbetterconsulting.com. That's got usually every link out there. You can find Fundraise Awesomer, A Practical Guide to Staying Sane While Doing Good, on Amazon. Or you can find us at on Facebook. We're just Do Good Better Consulting, and find us and join the conversation. And if you're a nonprofit and you just don't know where to start, it's a great resource. It's just, there's a bunch of freebies and a bunch of webinars. Or you can go to Apple Podcasts and type in the official Do Good Better podcast, and you can join the crew there, and the countless episodes that are, it's over and over again.
You have great guests, lots of information.
Yes.
And I think it's not even for nonprofits. Other people just in business in general can benefit from a lot of it.
That's the best part about, I think, what I do too, is that everything that we do in the nonprofit world, you can do in sales or marketing, right? You need to build better relationships. You need to, so be authentic, tell great stories. Everybody who is in marketing, sales, or fundraising needs to know those kind of things. And the type of guests we get, which is the best part about this podcast. I mean, you know this too, right? You get to reach out to somebody like, hey, would you like to be on the podcast? You're like, yeah, I'd be honored to do that. The most random, big name people, you just ask them, and they say yes. And because they love this medium, they love to talk about, and they love to teach too. And I think starting a podcast was great because I I got to meet so many more people that I would have never gotten to meet in the
Sure.
first place. And it's just an array of people who are way smarter than me coming on and talking with me. And then I get to dole out that information into the interwebs. Into the
And
ether.
likewise, being able to facilitate different people
Yes.
and connect them with other people.
Yeah.
It's-
And just have really good
love it.
conversations. Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you for bringing all your energy, all your positivity, all your do-gooding.
Thank you.
Can I use that word?
Yes, you may.
It's a different word.
I will
but-
give you carte blanche for that. Thank you, first of all, and thanks to the crack squad that puts this all together and edited too.
Madison.
So many
yeah.
of you.
Yeah.
But it's really great, and I love what you're doing, and great, and kudos and congratulations on launching the show. It's
Thank you.
it's awesome to have you here again. There's so many good voices out there, and there's a lot of people who could start a podcast. There's not a lot of people who do. So kudos for you, and kudos to you. So
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
absolutely.
Wow, what a great episode. Thank you so much for joining me. It's always so inspiring sharing these stories. Remember to like and subscribe to the podcast. I would love if you could leave me a 5-star review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. This helps us reach and engage with more people. Join me next week, and until then, make the most of your new day.